Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our hope. Amen. I wasn't sure when I made my midweek reflection video this week whether I'd get away with it. Apparently I did. This is indeed a real book. You have seen it for yourself. If you didn't see my midweek reflection video, I'll tell you what it was about. I talked about my butt. Having seen the learning together today, you understand why I was talking about my butt. But, no pun intended. Here's the thing. All this month, we've had Pride, we've had Indigenous History Month, we've had, what else have we had? We've had Men's Mental Health Month. There's been a bunch of heritage days for people from different countries that have become Canadian. There's all sorts of things happening. Birthdays. Hey, Canada Day is coming up next week. A day to celebrate Canada as a whole, of which we are all unique individuals, right? In fact, the traditional way of describing Canada is that it's a cultural mosaic, because we're all unique individuals. And together, we are one nation. Canada's only one nation of many around the world, too, right? It's one world, but many nations, many cultures, many traditions. It's interesting. What else is going on right now? Stampede is on in town, so yay for any cow persons. Yay for rodeoers. Yay for anybody who's following the World Cup, which is a great example of how one sport around the world played by many nations, no matter how ridiculously, embarrassingly, and outrageously corrupt the organization is that runs it, the event itself makes a very valid point, which is around the world, everyone plays this one sport to varying degrees of success, but everyone pretty much more people play football than play hockey. I know you're shocked to hear that, but it's true. Hockey's probably catching up, but nonetheless, and that's the great thing, isn't it? I often said this about hockey. It may have been invented in one place, and there's one country that is historically particularly good at it, but the fact is, people are playing it all over the world. How great is that? We've connected. We found something. We found a common ground that everyone wants to do. How awesome is that? Thank you. Finally, I got a pretty awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Because it is. And no matter how unique we all are, there are ways in which we are definitely one. And one of those is that we all live and breathe. The spirit of life is in all of us. That's our oneness. That's how we are, as Paul says, one body. But we're all unique individual members. And here's the part where it starts to get tricky. The reason Paul used that image is because he knew people would know it. I'm certain of it. I wasn't there at the time, but I'm certain he used that image because he knew people would know it, because he didn't come up with it. It wasn't new. It'd been around for a while. Thing is, the reason it'd been around for a while is because it was used to determine your place in society. However valuable your contribution to the body, whatever part you were, that determined your place in society and how respected and honored you were. Do you want to guess some parts that were not honored? Which is the point Paul is trying to make. The body needs equity to be whole. Not just the appearance of it, but the understanding of it and being true to it. Because when parts of the body suffer, the whole body suffers. When parts of the body are celebrated, the whole body celebrates. Or it ought to. And that was the point Paul was trying to make, is that historically, that metaphor had been used to determine where you were in society. And the point Paul was trying to make to the people of Corinth, who were struggling with that very idea, is that it's exactly the opposite. He Jesus'd it. Remember how often Jesus would say something that literally turned things upside down? That's the point of most of the parables. He's just trying to turn it upside down so that you'd understand that the way we as a society have constructed this beast is not how it's supposed to work. Every part of the body is valuable, even the butts. There are other parts too. And here's where it gets interesting, is if I started to talk about the other parts that aren't appropriate to talk about, you'd probably be annoyed now. Butts are okay because that's funny, and the animal bottom thing was cute. Don't go any further. And that's part of our problem, is that we find it awfully easy to dismiss the parts of the body we think are less valuable than others. And those are the parts, Paul points out, that need the most care. We'll do things like take money away from them when they need it. We'll do things like refuse to support them and care for them and provide food for them when they need it. We'll do things like make sure that we only invest in housing that gives us a decent return rather than provide housing to people who are desperately in need of it. Because we as a society tend to look at parts of the body as, what are you contributing? And if you're contributing something that we sense is valuable to us, you get more return on your investment. And if you need care, you're costing us money. If even one part of the body suffers, the body suffers. Because we are one. We talk a lot about how we are one in spirit. But that has to be put into practice. And that's Paul's point. He's writing to a community that he helped found, a community of faith that he helped found with the principles that Jesus would have lived with, which is we are not just equal, we live in equity, which means that we don't all get exactly the same thing. What we get is what we need. And the Corinthians were struggling with that because there were slaves in that community, and there were rich people, and there were ordinary people. There were fishermen, probably. Corinth was particularly cosmopolitan into the city, and so there were probably people from different traditions and different cultures. When they had their meals, because they were famous for that in the early days, remember? They used to gather at someone's house for a big meal, and then they'd have the sacrament of the Eucharist, the communion as well, and then somebody would teach. And one of the things that Paul is writing about is the fact that when they gathered for those meals, some people bought really fancy food, and some people did not. And the people who brought the fancy food didn't want the people who didn't bring the fancy food to eat their fancy food. And that started all sorts of divisions. It started all sorts of argument, all sorts of lack of honoring all the parts. Which is why Paul is writing to them and saying this. You can't say, we are one in the Spirit of God, and then not honor what are the needs of everyone that are part of that body. It isn't easy, and Paul recognized that. He recognized they were struggling, and we struggle with it constantly. It isn't easy, and it's exhausting. On Friday, anybody following the World Cup? On Friday in Seattle, they had already decided, because it was Pride Month in Seattle, that that would be the Pride game. And guess who played in it? They didn't know ahead of time, but it turned out to be Iran and Egypt, two of the countries in the world in which being gay would get you dead. Tricky, isn't it? It's difficult and it's challenging and it's not always going to work out easily. Sometimes it's going to be a battle. It wasn't, and it was a draw, by the way, in case you were wondering. They tied 1-1. But it's exhausting sometimes. I think actually, I mean, you can't judge Paul's tone just in the way it was written. But I like to think that Paul was writing that, trying to affirm, you know what, you are good people. And this is hard work. Keep at it, because you are one body. Look at how great you're doing. It's a struggle. The very fact that we're even making an effort is awesome. But just look at each other and see how amazing each of you is. And how each of you brings something. Even if some days that's a need, other days it might not. But this is what it means to belong. To truly belong doesn't mean that you just fit in and agree with everybody. It means you bring something to the community that changes the dynamic of the community because you brought it. And others affirm it and engage it. Some might appreciate it, some might not. But it becomes part of the dynamic of the community. That's what makes belonging in a community. We're all part of the body. And we need to pay attention to the parts that we don't want to talk about in polite company. And that could be because they have needs. And we see in the way we've structured things that they have needs that need to be met, and that's going to cost money. Where's that going to come from? Got to find it. Because they have needs, and that's more important. Who's able to contribute to that? Sometimes it will be because I don't agree with that. Sometimes it will be because you see something that you not only don't agree with, it offends you. Sometimes it will be because they cut you off on the highway on your way here when you're in a hurry. And you will call them because that's how we use those parts of the body. All right, clearly not everyone uses those parts of the body that way, but some of us do, and we're okay with that. We're not, is the thing, and we shouldn't be. And that's Paul's point again. It's not just enough to recognize the equity. You need to be able to talk about it. We need to be able to talk about why people have needs. We need to talk about how these people are so successful should contribute more to the care of these people who are not. You can't just say, well, you can work because I've judged it so. You can't just say, you should get some greater benefit because, look, you already have lots. So obviously you're successful. The community that is whole recognizes not only all the parts, but the diversity of those parts, and that sometimes those parts need care. Sometimes those parts need care to keep them healthy. Sometimes those parts need care because they are broken. Sometimes those parts need care because they just are annoying, but they still need the care of community. We are one body. We are all children of God. We are all part of one great global family. We are all connected to each other by spirit, by the universe, whatever language you want to use. We are all one.